Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios and brought to you by our official sponsor, the Mike Wagner Show, international award-winning author Mia Moses The Missing, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. He's backed by popular demand, New York Times bestselling author of 12 books, including 4 national bestsellers. He's a science teacher, attorney, and founding editor of The Age of Autism. He worked for U.S. Senator Pete Wilson, U.S. Attorney's Office in San Francisco, and we talked briefly about his book we had on Presidential Takedown, how Anthony Fauci, the CDC, the NIH, and the WHO conspired to overthrow President Trump, and we had a lot of great press about it. And we're going to be talking about the one book, which also caused a stir as well, too. We're glad to talk about. This was CNN, and of course, you think about the James Earl Jones. I think that's going to be changed as well, too, from the founding of CNN to its current state as well, too, and what's coming up as well, too. I guess we're going to find out. Live, ladies and gentlemen, from the Plus Studios in beautiful Northern California, New York Times bestselling author of 12 books, 4 national bestsellers, science teacher, attorney, founding editor of Age of Autism, and also the latest book, or one of his books. This was CNN, and we'll talk more about it in his upcoming popular demand, author Kent Heckenlively. Kent, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us once again.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Well, it's great to have you back as well, too. So last we talked to you, New York Times bestselling author of 12 books, including 4 national bestsellers. You worked as a science teacher, attorney, founding editor of Age of Autism. You had some great stories about that. You also worked for U.S. Senator Pete Wilson, the U.S. Attorney's Office in San Francisco. And we talked previously about Presidential Takedown, how Anthony Fauci, the CDC, NIH, and the WHO conspired to overthrow President Trump. We had some discussions about that. And now we're going to get to a book which you covered briefly. And this, I think we'd like to cover as well. This is not CNN. This was CNN. How sex, lies, and spies undid the world's worst news networking. And co-author with Cary Poarch as well, too. And before getting all that, Kent, once again, very quickly, just tell us how you got started.
So I started publishing books in about 2013 with Dr. Judy Mikovits. Our first book was called Plague. I've done a number of books on my own, but I've done 4 books with Dr. Mikovits. I've done 3 with Project Veritas Whistleblowers. And, you know, I've discovered that I actually have a skill to write fairly quickly. So I can generally write 3, maybe 4 books in a year. And so people just keep coming to me with stories, and so I just keep writing and going on shows and talking about the stuff I love.
He also had as well, too, had The Plague of Corruption, The Truth About Masks, Behind the Mask of Facebook, one of my favorites in the case against the vaccine mandate, and one of my favorites, Behind the Mask of Facebook. And do you think it's actually, is it still improving, or do you still have to go behind the mask on Facebook? Sometimes you still wonder about Facebook.
Yeah, well, you know, as I hear it, the young kids are not really going into Facebook. So, you know, they've got a huge amount of money, but they have a shrinking customer base. And I think that, you know, if you show the people that you're not on the side of all the people, some of the people decide not to use your product. And that number just gets bigger and bigger. And so I think a lot of these tech giants, you know, at the moment they appear still extremely strong, but I think under the hood, the adults in the room are noticing that the problem is there.
And do you think Facebook is going to survive in the long run, or is it going to collapse like MySpace did back in what, 2006, 2007?
You know, I'll be interested to see what happens with Facebook. They have brought in, you know, a lot of really good people, and I think that Facebook will probably be around, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were catastrophes that, you know, are going to happen in the next couple of years.
And of course, you know, many of them as well too have gone on to Instagram, TikTok, and also Twitter, LinkedIn, and of course, you also there's also a new platform which is called Truth, which is some of a Facebook offshoot, MeWe, and everything else. And of course, you also have that lawsuit that the people are going after TikTok as well too. So, so you just give us your take on that one.
Yeah, I think that TikTok is especially dangerous, and I think a lot of these tech companies have a lot of dangers that people don't really understand. But you know, to their point, I think that there are a lot of people out there who are not like us, who don't want to discuss politics that much, who just want to share information and chit chat about this, that, or the other thing. And Facebook and some of these other platforms might be great for that. But I think that there is an enormous danger in terms of the connection of these companies with our intelligence agencies, what our intelligence agencies might be doing behind the scenes. I mean, what we've seen with the Twitter files is really quite disturbing. Elon Musk going on Tucker Carlson tonight talking about the fact that all of your DMs on Twitter are accessible to certain groups. Now, who might those groups be?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's the Italian Secret Service that they're going to.
Don't they speak with their hands on that one instead of tweeting about with their hands? Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, we got your DMs.
Yeah, to get some boss and your godfather.
So, and you know, it just feeds this growing cynicism. You know, what I always say is, you know, once you become a cynic and you see behind the curtain, you don't go back to trusting. And so, you know, what is it, like 24% trust the media, you know? So, you know, but the question is, how are they manipulating us in other ways that that we don't fully understand?
Mm-hmm. And plus, too, of course, the big question is how much information is too much information. I guess that's a question too. You know, whatever to release, share, and everything like that. It's like how much information is too much. Some people wonder about
Well, and you know, maybe there's a philosophical question, but you know, the question is, if you know everything about a person, do you know everything about a person?
that. Mm-hmm.
And you know, might you focus on one aspect that you think is really important about a person, and it's completely not important? So, you know, as much as the intelligence agencies are probably sucking up all of our data, the question is, what can they do with it? What, you know, genuinely, you know, what concerns me is not maybe the specific information that they know about us, but can they uncover our psychology? Can they uncover the ways to denigrate a certain individual that actually seems to work with the public? I mean, you know, if you call somebody a racist, if you call somebody Nazi, if you know, say they're misogynistic, you know, do they have the ability to know? Okay, let's take a popular figure. I mean, you know, recently what's happened with Scott Adams, the cartoonist for Dilbert, is really, you know, very intriguing to me because
It
I
does,
look
yeah.
at it, I look at it as an example of, okay, this is somebody who talks to conservatives, but he is very clear that on a lot of issues he's kind of, you know, left of Bernie, and but you know, he speaks to everybody, you know, with respect, and you know, show your homework, and okay, I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, you know, he figures he's very liberal minded, but he can add. So you know, it's one
Just like
thing to,
Dogbird, he can add, but somewhat though.
yeah, and so you know, he was recently attacked very viciously, lost all of his Dilbert cartoons for pointing out the fact that a large number of the Black community doesn't know or disagrees with the statement, it's okay to be white. And the point he was making is, if there's a large group of people who are likely to have a negative opinion of you, maybe you shouldn't be around those people.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that was called racist. And what he was pointing out was that the crazy racism that the media has created in the Black population towards the white population. I mean, you know, if you conducted a survey among whites and would you say it's okay to be Black, I would assume that the number would be close to 100%. I mean, you'd have maybe your 1 or 2% stupid racist, but you know, we would say, hey, look, you know, hey, look, it's fine to be Black, it's fine to be, you know, Asian, it's fine to be Indian, whatever. You know,
Mm-hmm.
these immutable characteristics are not what should define us. It should be our character and our actions which define us.
And do you think Scott Adams could have created maybe like a character that was suited for the black race or the Asian race or the Hispanic race or anything like that? Do you think he could have created a character, or is he better off just simply like,
Well,
hey, I'm gonna stick to what I've done since like what 1980, 1990 when Dilbert was out?
well, he actually did recently. About a year ago, he created character Dave, um, who is a black engineer. And the joke with Dave is you never can tell whether he's telling the truth or not,
Hmm.
whether he's serious or not, because he seems to be a joker. So, for example, in the first cartoon, Dave is brought in, and the boss was talking about their efforts for diversity, and we're welcoming Dave and everything, and they turn to Dave, and Dave says, "I identify as white."
Huh.
So yeah, and he's completely deadpan face, and so then the boss is like, "Well, let's continue on with today."
they're,
So
they're, they're probably like, why is the ghost like?
yeah, so Dave is the Joker, and so but it's really instructive because Scott Adams is really a master provocateur, but he does it to make a point. And he's like, okay, all the racist papers canceled me because I was pointing out racism, and they canceled me for pointing out racism. And to hear his broadcast, he talks about how his locals platform is going really well and everything, and he feels like he has so much more freedom in his Dilbert comic strip. So he's made the point that maybe we've reached a place in this country where being canceled will actually not be the death of your career, but you can have a different career and actually have more freedom. So I'm hopeful for that.
And of course, we're seeing that as well too. And of course, speaking of the media as well too, we'll talk about this was CNN, how sex, lies, and spies undid the world's worst network. I mean, could it be better? Could it be worse? Could it be improved? We don't know. Along with a brief presidential takedown with Kent Heckenlively. But first, you listen to the Mike Widener Show at the MikeWidenerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget, Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition rate. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. It's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Widener Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give an official shout out to our official sponsor, the Mike Widener Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is illusion and those you love will be the first go missing. It's available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews, and Eve 11 enjoys by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassie, Forge Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today for Goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Also, check out the Mike Widener Show at the MikeWidenerShow.com or 40 podcast platforms: Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Odyssey, Apple FM, iTunes, Google Play. Also, subscribe on YouTube, BitChute, Rumble. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok today. Take us with you on any mobile device. And for great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Widener Show podcast. T-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies. Makes great gifts 24/7. Make sure to go to Amazon.com for more, and for more great gift ideas like t-shirts, pop sockets, hoodies, and phone cases, Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia, and for great books like Missing, Once, and Wrinkles. And support the Mike Widener Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and the MikeWidenerShow.com. We're here with author and best-selling author of 12 books, 4 national bestsellers, Kent Heckenlively, here on the Mike Widener Show. And we covered about some of the plagues as well too, and also covered a little bit about the hide and the mask of Facebook. And before we talk about this with CNN, we talked last about the presidential takedown, how Anthony Fauci, the CDC, NIH, and the WHO conspired to overthrow President Trump, and maybe once again tell us a bit about it for those who miss it. And how's that coming so far for you?
No, it's actually selling pretty well. We're getting a lot of good Amazon reviews. I think we're about 4.8, 4.9 stars out of 5. And so Presidential Takedown, I co-authored with Dr. Paul Alexander, who is a senior pandemic advisor from about May of 2020 until September of that year. And it is really what was going on behind the scenes. It's really a You Are There book.
Hmm.
Title, got that great picture of Fauci at the podium and Trump looking at him kind of with a bit of skepticism.
Oh yeah, you know what? We got some news about President Trump. We'll talk about that in some opinion. And he's just like, have you been messing with Melania lately? Did you really give her the vaccine or no? But we'll talk about that in a bit too, and more about presidential takedown.
Yeah, and so in Presidential Takedown, he just goes over the fact that he's one of the world's leading experts on evidence-based medicine, and he was brought in because the Trump administration did not believe that the COVID task force was giving Trump the correct information, and very quickly he found himself at odds with Anthony Fauci and Deborah Birx. Not Robert Redfield of the CDC. Robert Redfield is really kind of an ally. And so if you follow what Redfield has been saying in the press, you can really kind of see a man who's also trying to get the truth out. And so what happened is that Paul Alexander was asking for the information to justify shutting down schools, social distancing, the vaccines. And he was also producing his own evidence that, maybe from, March of 2020 to June, okay, can understand why you might want to close schools as a precaution, but you definitely should have been opening those schools come August, September of 2020. And if that had been done, that would have put parents in a good mood. We could have gotten rid of this crazy social distancing because there was really no science behind it. He tells a story about how he saw Redfield coming out of the meeting, shaking his head, and he goes up to him and says, "Robert, what are you so upset? We just set the social distancing rules at 6 feet." And Paul says, "Oh, can you show me some of the research which justifies the 6 foot social distancing?" And Redfield shakes his head and says, "There's no research. Some countries do 1 foot, others do 3 feet, others do 12 feet. They just decided 6 feet sounded in the middle and it was something they could sell." So it was absolutely crazy. And so, Paul Alexander was just, a lone voice, a lone courageous voice on the COVID-19 task force, saying that what they were doing was terrible, that it was harming children, that it was wrecking society. And probably the big shocking thing about it is, as the senior pandemic advisor, he, had access to the executive lunchroom at Health and Human Services, which was kind of the center of the world at that time. And he's from Trinidad, speaks with a Caribbean accent. He's Middle Eastern descent, North African descent. And so he would be talking to these heads of the departments, and the heads of the departments would say things like, "Paul, our job every day is to make Trump look bad on the evening news." And it was shocking to Paul Alexander, who had, grown up idolizing the United States as, this great free bastion of, enlightened people who wanted the public good. And, here he is in the middle of a 100-year public health crisis, and these bureau chiefs are playing politics. Mm-hmm. And so just quite disturbing. But he brings all the receipts. It's got all the information. I include some of the emails that he sent to the COVID-19 task force, which they're probably very unhappy that we published them, because it shows that they had no justification for what they were doing.
And of course, you talk about that 6 foot rule as well, too, having you pick a number between. Did they base it on science? Was it based on just guessing, or did it require a lot of scientists, or they simply just pick the number out of the blue? There's a number of stories about that.
Kind of like marketing. What sounds good?
Right. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I mean,
get a dog. It'll be your new best friend. Stay 6 feet away from people.
Right, exactly. It was just my wife was telling me, it's like, why do they pick the number 6? Why can't it be 5, 7, 4, 8? I guess you kind of wonder about that rule. And of course, talking about the divisiveness of the media, the country, and everything else. Of course, with President Trump, of course, in the news, being indicted on 8 counts of business fraud involving Stormy Daniels that happened in what was it, 2014 or 18 before he became president. And of course, some people were saying that oh, he deserved it, he lied, and this and that. And some others are simply saying the fact that it's totally unrelated to being a president and whatever else. And I guess just based on all the facts, what you hear from both sides, it's like, what sense do you make of it?
It seems like a complete political prosecution to me, because one of the there are a couple things that are often true. And one of the things that's very often true is that when you become a public figure, you get people coming after you who you may have never met in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And they make a claim. Oh, I was at a bar and this person came on to me, blah, blah, blah. This person beat me up. This person did that.
Right. Uh-huh.
And it's like, okay, do I have a daily record of where I've been? Could I tell you where I was on a Tuesday night 3 years ago? No, I can't. So oftentimes what happens is that people who are in the public eye, they will settle cases because they're nuisances.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So maybe it's a nuisance case. So that's one thing that is undoubtedly true. What's another thing that's undoubtedly true? When you're a good looking billionaire, you might play the field a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those things are true. What exactly is true in this instance, I got no idea.
Mm-hmm.
But what is clear to me is that whatever Trump may have done in his personal life, it doesn't seem to affect the fact that he has great kids. It seems like he's got a wonderful marriage with Melania. It seems like his divorces, it's difficult to go through a divorce and, maintain relationships, but it seems like his relationships with his previous wives was good,
Mm-hmm.
as good as any divorced person can do. And to the last point, we don't hire somebody to be president of the United States because we want to marry them.
Mm-hmm.
We hire them to do the job of president, to be a chief executive. And for my 2 cents worth, he did a pretty damn good job of being chief executive in a very difficult situation, because the bureaucracy didn't want him. And so I think he, whether you want to vote for Trump or not the next time, I think there are strong arguments on both sides. You could say he had his chance,
Mm-hmm.
and he blew it. He did a lot of great things, but he didn't go in there with a wrecking ball and change it. I get that. Fine. You could also say, who could genuinely understand how bad the government is?
Mm-hmm.
They kneecapped him right from the start by taking out General Flynn. Okay. General Flynn was going to be the bulldog to go in there and root out the deep state. They did that. They handicapped him with, the Russia collusion nonsense. And with all that, taking all that fire, he still did an amazing amount of things. I would say, a really successful term. And then COVID came around, and his instincts that it came from China and we were doing some crazy things has been borne out. And so, I think Operation Warp Speed is a disaster. I think we're going to be paying for that for many years.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah. But I think he got bad information. And so I can understand there's a good argument for voting for Trump again, as, hey, he's the guy in the United States who really understands how bad this is better than anybody else. The other side might say, he got his shot. Give me somebody else who's going to take a shot, who won't get it wrong the first time.
Mm-hmm. And of course that's really understandable as well too. Of course, depends on what network you listen to. You know, Fox, CNN, Reuters, or ABC, CBS, and NBC. And speaking of CNN, we'll talk about your book in just a minute. This was CNN. Get more into it. How sex, lies, and spies undid the world's worst network. You listen to the Mike Widener Show at the MikeWidenerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios, and brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Widener Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. We'll be back with 12-time best-selling or 4-time best-selling author Kent Heckenlively after this time. We're back with New York Times best-selling author of 12 books, 4 national bestsellers, Kent Heckenlively, here on the Mike Widener Show. And we talked a little bit about This Was CNN, how sex, lies, and spies undid the world's worst news network. And of course, you know, I remember back in the day that well, actually it was started by Ted Turner as an alternative to you know, take on ABC, CBS, and NBC, and also PBS, and then Fox joined the fray. And of course, you know, what was the intention of CNN, and why did it really go bad?
Yeah, so the book really opens up as something of a love letter to Ted Turner, who was a definite lefty, but he had this belief that when you had a controversial issue, you should get the smartest person on the left, smartest person on the right, let them go at it for 15 or 20 minutes, let the audience decide, you know, sort of the crossfire model. And that was great. And you know what happened is in 2003, CNN was purchased by Time Warner. Now, Ted was told that he would continue to have influence over the direction of CNN, but that was a lie. And he gave an interview with Mike Wallace in 2004, in which he said his sale of CNN was the biggest mistake of his life. And if he had it to do over again, he never would have done it because they lied to him about the amount of control he would have. So then what started happening, a number of things started happening. And you know, oftentimes when things go bad, it's not necessarily because people intended bad things at the beginning. You know, but let's say, you know, Time Warner just wanted to kind of throw the Turner model out and figure something else out. Well, a number of other things were happening in the media industry. What was happening is that you could figure out through use of technology how and comments on programs what stories were really hitting. Now, this is something that is, I think, something that we in the public need to think about rather than necessarily throwing the blame on an entity like CNN, which is the networks found out that those stories that got us emotional and upset got us to watch longer. So outrage theater, as I call it, kept you on the program longer. Okay. And so this became a model for both CNN and Fox, where it used to be that there was this belief that, you know, let's have both sides of the argument make their best case. Well, then what happened was CNN would put the nuttiest person on the right up against, you know, a fairly smart person on the left. Well, Fox would, you know, I watch Fox, but I find myself walking away more because I'm like, well, okay, I get a smart person on the right that I really like, and then they'll look for the stupidest thing any liberal in the United States did that day, and then that's the story. And I'm like, okay, well, the stupidest thing somebody conservative did and the stupidest thing somebody liberal did that day is not the news.
Not fair and balanced. You're right. Not fair and balanced. I'm glad they took that moniker out of there. It was no longer fair and balanced.
Yeah, you know, and you know, to Fox's credit, they have sometimes gotten you know, some good people on the left, or good representatives of the left, like they had Donna Brazil there for a while, and I thought that was pretty good. But the problem that I find, and you know, I'm actually really intrigued by the campaign run of Vivek Ramaswamy, where, you know, he's making the point, look, I'm going to go on every show. And, if we're in the conservative movement, we should go on every single left-wing show we can. And then we should ask all of the liberals to go on all the right-leaning shows that they can. And let's have at it. And I think rediscovering that ethos of going anywhere and taking all the questions. And, if they're being unfair to you, just say, like, stop being a dick to me. Let me talk. Is that such a terrible thing to say? Which is like, because sometimes I'll switch on Meet the Press, and Chuck Todd will have some conservative on, and like, oh my God, it almost looks like he's going to take out a knife and stab the conservative.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, have respect. I mean, I think it's one of the reasons why Joe Rogan's show is so incredibly popular. Because what does Joe Rogan do? First couple minutes, he's like, hey, you look like you're in great shape. Hey, you really have done an enormous amount of work. Can you tell me, what got you into this? And, let's connect on a personal level, and then we can get down to our disagreements. But, I'm always, let's talk in a respectful manner to each other, and, find out where we differ. And, we may be surprised, because in putting together the CNN book, it really kind of changed my mind about what's going on in the United States. I'm not looking at it so much as a left-right dynamic, but outside forces are trying to make us fight with each other. And those forces really don't have our best interests at heart, whether you're left or right.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you also got the disagreements too, leading to a number of censorship as well too, like DirecTV banning NewsMax and OANN and everything else, true censorship. And of course, you may think it's a free market, CNN, Fox, and all that, and really, it is not. Like controlling, what is truth and what is not too. Ramifications, government censorship, and everything else, and even the government getting involved in all levels of CNN, Fox, and just about everything else.
Well, one of the things that I was really interested in with this CNN book, because I used to love CNN. CNN was on in my house when I was growing up. And so I wanted to find a different angle to the media story. And so in putting together the CNN book, I hired one of the world's best group of researchers to do a deep dive on CNN. And I had a number of questions. I was really kind of initially looking at the bias angle. I was looking for contacts between CNN and prominent Democrats. And I found that a little bit, but not as much as I expected. But my researchers came back to me and they said, Kent, we've got something that's really disturbing. And I think you're going to want to know a little bit more about it. I said, okay, give it to me. And they said, we have uncovered this really strange pattern of journalists and producers and top people at CNN having an intelligence background.
Really?
So not just, somebody worked for the FBI for 10 years and then they went to work for CNN. And, you can kind of imagine, okay, well, I guess, you want to be civically minded, who knows where you go and everything. This was different. This was journalists working in the business, and then for a year or two, leaving journalism, going to work for a government position, and then going back to journalism. Huh. So what do I mean with this? Well, let's take the most prominent example. Jim Sacuto is the national security correspondent for CNN.
Mm-hmm.
So what you'd expect from him is that his integrity would be rock solid, right?
Mhm.
He's the guy who's going to tell us the truth about what other countries are doing and what our country is doing. Well, if that's the case, then why did Jim Sakudo go to work as chief of staff at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, China, from December 2011 to May of 2013?
Huh.
So let's hypothesize. If you're chief of staff at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, China, do you think it's likely that you have to sign non-disclosure and secrecy agreements? Yes, because in your job, in your role as chief of staff at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, China, I would have to imagine that some of our most closely guarded secrets and intelligence passed through the hands of Jim Sakudo. So how is it that somebody who went to work for the government where they had access to classified information then comes back to CNN to work as a supposedly objective journalist?
Word.
You know, if you're a journalist, you're supposed to speak truth to power.
Mhm.
You're not supposed to go to work for power. You're supposed to be a check on power. You're not supposed to be getting a paycheck from power. And
Mhm.
this pattern repeated time and time again. Another great example is a guy named Bob Ortega, who covers the border issues.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, from January of 2009 to July of 2010, he was vice consul of the U.S. consulate in Ecuador.
Mhm.
So, again, an incredibly sensitive position. So, he is privy to our most closely guarded secrets. And, I love me the people who work in the intelligence fields, Department of State. Great. Love you. Thank you for your service. Journalists, love it. That's what you're supposed to do. I remember a time where journalists wouldn't want to go out to dinner with a politician.
I
'Cause they
remember those days. I was a writer back then, even sports writer. You never ever mixed politics. Like say you go out for even like a burger, 7-course meal with a politician. You never did that.
Yeah, because the idea was that it would mess up your objectivity, right?
Mhm.
That's what we're looking for. We're looking for the facts. So give us objectivity. So time and time again, there's this pattern, and we reveal the names and backgrounds of 21 individuals. Usually, we access this information through their LinkedIn accounts because it seems that if you've ever had the authority to look at secret documents, you can't help but brag about that. So
Mhm.
all of these people were bragging about how they had access to classified materials, and they're now journalists. It's kind of a weird thing. And there was another thing that we found that was really disturbing, which is CNN has this digital intelligence group.
Mhm.
Okay. So my guys who did the research were experts in cybersecurity. And so they're saying, hey, look, depending on how you count it, CNN has from 4,000 to 7,000 employees worldwide. Okay. And they said, Kent, they've got a cybersecurity team of more than 220 individuals. I'm like,
Wow.
yeah. And they go, it should be like 15 to 20. So, and when we looked at the backgrounds of the guys who were running it, one guy in particular, his name is actually Edwin Covert.
Huh.
Okay. That's his last name. Covert is his last name.
Oh my goodness.
Well, does he have an intelligence background? Oh yeah. He was like an instructor in cyber warfare for the NSA. So you've got these guys who've got digital warfighting experience running the digital intelligence group at CNN, which is like 10 times larger than it should be, which raises the question, what are they doing? You know, you could hypothesize that, well, gee, there's a news agency and, you know, they'd want to be protected and everything. Okay, you know, maybe twice the size of what it should normally be. But it raises the question of whether CNN is developing an offensive cyber warfare fighting capacity. And if they're developing that capacity, how are they going to use it? Go against Fox? Go against Newsmax? Go against, you know, America One News?
Or
go against
Reuters, BBC?
Or maybe go against a nation they don't like. If you know, it's that old thing. If you build it, people will use it. Okay.
Right.
So, you know, unless you have a really good system of checks and balances, and then you can have some, but maybe not complete confidence.
Right. And of course, you know, another question which came to mind about, you know, having a journalist, you know, being separate from the politicians and covering the actual news. And you talked about having a journalist and politicians just coming together. And it seemed like the ethics of journalism has gone down. What do you think the root cause really is of having it where it's like, you know, where the journalists don't actually, you know, cover the news, they actually, you know, just, you know, cover the backs? It's like, you know, where do you think the root cause really is?
You know, I think a number of things have happened. I think that journalism used to be separate from corporate America, but here's one of the problems. I'm not sure if this is a new problem or we're just bringing it to light, because the chapter that I have about the journalists going to work in intelligence capacities or where they have access to classified documents is prefaced by a Carl Bernstein New York Times, Rolling Stone article from 1977, in which he detailed how more than 400 members of the press were on the payroll of the CIA, something called Operation Mockingbird, which probably a lot of your audience knows about. Well, those names never got revealed. And what was interesting is, you know, there were some prohibitions about, you know, the intelligence agencies working with journalists. But when you actually look at what's happened in the past couple of years, it's sort of a joke. Okay. Now, when government tries to do bad things, they'll have the best, most innocent sounding names for them. So in 2014, 2015, I believe, when the Islamic State was doing their terrible beheadings in the Middle East, the government came up with this Global Engagement Center. Okay. And actually, when you read through, you know, the legislation, you go, oh, okay, it seems like they've got some protections here. This is designed to go against the Islamic State. They were, you know, talking about freedom of Americans. And so you go, okay, you know, looks good. Well, about 2 years later, just before Trump took office, there was an amendment to the Global Engagement Center. Instead of specifically naming, you know, the Islamic State, it included China, Russia, or other non-state actors who may be acting in a way which is not conducive to the national security of the United States. And you find yourself going, oh, wait a minute.
Whoa.
That's a loophole you could drive a truck through. Non-state actor who is acting in a way that is, you know, not in the best interest of the United States. I mean, they could use that and say, our broadcast here, we're non-state actors and we are questioning the current government. And so therefore, the government could write lies about us and get them published in the news media. It was also really interesting to see about what the real prohibition is from an intelligence agent using a journalist. Okay. So this is in 3 parts. Part 1, no intelligence agent shall unknowingly have will use a journalist unknowingly to plant story, basically plant stories. And so you go, oh, okay, that sounds pretty good. Point 2, however, the president and director of the CIA may make a finding that the intelligence agents can use a journalist. But there's all these reporting requirements. Number 3, if the intelligence agents tells the journalist that he's an intelligence agent and the intelligence agent and the journalist agrees to work with the intelligence agents, that's fine. And I'm going, that's no prohibition. That's some spook talking to a journalist going, hey, I can get you some stuff. And the journalist going, oh, great. Well, the journalist may not know if it's bullshit or not. And so, and once the journalist agrees, the journalist is now part of that system. He can get fed things. And these intelligence agents, one of the things in another book, actually was in this book that I was working on, because when these findings, became known to us, we shared them with our publisher because it was just so, disturbing that my publisher wanted to make sure that I got this stuff verified. So one of the guys that we gave it to was a 33-year veteran of the FBI, who said, he joined the FBI when it was really the FBI, when it, after all the Hoover revelations, and they went back to being a law enforcement agents. And this guy had a great background because he'd actually been the FBI lead agent in 2 foreign capitals. Now, as the FBI lead agent, he had to interface with the CIA station chief in those areas and with the CIA agents who were operating in that country. And he had this problem, which he brought to the attention of the local CIA station chief, which was, he said, God damn it, why, when I talk to your agents, do they lie to me so much? And the CIA guy said, yeah, that's a real problem. We have to have trainings for our CIA agents because they just get so used to lying about things. They lie about everything. And I thought, oh my God, you can imagine lying becomes such a habit. Somebody asks, like, hey, where's the closest In-N-Out burger? Oh, it's 3 blocks that way, when it's really 2 blocks that way. He goes, these guys just lied about everything because the habit was just so ingrained in them. So he said that's the difference between the old FBI. The old FBI, as he explained it to me, is that every agent knew that they might eventually end up in court and they'd have to raise their right hand and say, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That was the culture in which he was raised. The intelligence guys, that's not their training. They're trained to lie and manipulate. And I think culturally, that's the problem with the intelligence agencies. I believe we need to do a wholesale, reordering of the intelligence agencies because the culture is just so rotten. And unfortunately, what this longtime FBI agent said is he said, unfortunately, the FBI, after 9/11, here's another interesting story he told about the FBI after 9/11. So according to this guy, what happened after 9/11 was that the FBI director at the time, Robert Mueller, came to President George W. Bush maybe like a week or two after the attacks, and he says, "Okay, Mr. President, I have all of the information on all of the hijackers, all of the information about how this plot came to be." And so, according to the story, Trump's response was, "I don't care. What I care about is you have to prevent the next one." And according to his long-term FBI agent, that's when the FBI switched from being a law enforcement agency to an intelligence gathering agency.
All because of 9/11 and that one particular incident.
Yeah. And you can see how it could happen. I mean, I remember those days. I enthusiastically supported the Patriot Act. And now I'm just like, oh my God, what was I thinking?
And I think a lot of people were like that too. And of course, you also look at some of the other culture shifts as well too, like with Martin Luther King. I have a dream and everything else. Talking about culture shifts, the old FBI, the new FBI, CIA, presidents, and everything else. And of course, you got the critical race theory, which you're writing a book about, killing Martin's dream. And of course, critical race theory in your terms, and killing Martin's dream in your terms.
Yeah, so we're working on a couple different titles. So it's kind of like it might be diversity heist at this point, but it really is about how Martin Luther King's dream that we would all be judged on the content of our character is a really excellent organizing principle for society, and treat us all as individuals. And unfortunately, what critical race theory is doing is breaking us up into tribes. And we have a tribal identity, but not an individual identity. And that's also really disturbing, because we feel that we've uncovered evidence that seems to be driven by large foundations, which are almost acting like the British Crown used to act when they wanted to go against the Spanish Main. And instead, and Britain didn't have a navy, but when they'd give these letters of marque to privateers, and they created piracy. And so it seems like these large foundations are basically creating a pirate fleet of activists who are engaging in destruction of our country and the creation of racial tension, and to the detriment of us all.
It almost sounds like they're getting rid of the whole individualistic thing, getting rid of the egos and all that. It's almost like birds of a feather, just taking it to the 10th degree. That's what it appears to be. Birds of a feather is becoming more popular.
Yeah. So we're working on that book. So probably sometime in May we'll submit that to the publishers, and hopefully it'll come out sometime in the fall.
Okay, that sounds great. We'd love to have you back as well too, and hopefully get some good journalists on that one too, and nobody from the FBI in this one too. So
yeah,
have that. We're here with author Kent Heckenlively of this was CNN: How Sex, Lies, and Spies Undid the World's Worst News Network on the Mike Widener Show, along with a presidential takedown as well. Kent, a very big thank you for your time as always, and it's always great to have you on. And once again, what's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your books?
Check out my books any place books are sold on the web: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. You can find me on Twitter, Kent Heckenlively, and I've also got a website where you can take a look at some of my books, www.kentheckenlivelybooks.com.
We will certainly check that out. Once again, Ken, it's great to have you back on. A big thank you for your time as always. Looking forward to having you again soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Live you back. Wish all best. And Kent, you definitely have a great future ahead of you.
Thanks so much.